All right, welcome Ashley to our show. We're in the early makings of the cybersecurity nonprofit podcast series. And in this series, I'm trying to show off not only people's real experiences in the security field, but I also want to talk about topics like today's. So today we're going to be talking about the big Tick Tock controversy. So I'm David Lee. I'm working as content creation lead for cybersecurity nonprofit. And today we've got Ashley Pedicini with us in the house. And Ashley, why don't you introduce yourself? What do you do these days?
I am a tech ops specialist at Rubica, and you can just call me Ash. I usually prefer just to lop off the last part of my name. It's don't need the Lee part. I'm just Ash.
So Ash, what does a tech ops specialist do, and what kind of experience do you have in cybersecurity these days?
Okay, so I got hired under the InfoSec, or the Information Security branch of Rubica, to take care of people's equipments to onboard and offboard. But then I started reaching out because information security and cybersecurity is everything that we do. So anytime somebody wants a new cloud app, anytime somebody wants to access a new tool, Marco, who's my coworker, and I go in and vet. We look at the security, we look at the privacy policies, because there's always that little tiny link that says privacy policies, and then they say, hey, we're going to take all this information from you, and we're like, that's not vetted. We don't want to use that. We want to be secure. So I do a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of Google troubleshooting. I do a lot of network security stuff. I look at, okay, you can't connect to the internet, or hey, this looks like a port that might be open in one of our switches in our network closet. We want to make sure that we are addressing any sort of vulnerabilities that could be opening up.
That's awesome. So you work in an industry where the focus is on where is my personal information? Is my personal information secure? And that's the context you're coming from, it sounds like.
It is. One of the VPN best practices, it sits there and it says, hey, we're going to hide your IP address. So instead of saying, hey, I'm coming from this Starbucks location or this home network, it sits there and says, we're going to take this IP address, we're going to mask it, and then we're going to create the secure encrypted tunnel where you can pass your traffic back and forth so that your passwords aren't being sniffed out by those bad threat actors. So your information is not coming out, because even if they're not taking passwords or the big banking information, they're saying, well, what OS are you using? What kind of cloud apps are you using? And they use that for targeted phishing attempts. That's really what we're looking at right now, or we're seeing more threats from.
Well, shoot, let's talk about this huge mess we've got in the news right now with not only election security as a huge topic, but just these apps that are making the news. So, WeChat is another one. That one's been under heavy scrutiny. And TikTok especially is a really controversial one. And these apps are insanely popular. When I heard, I don't use TikTok myself, but when I heard about this, and I learned about these apps, these are big, very common apps. These could be in any household, on people of all ages, right? Anybody could have these apps on their phone. So this whole ban of TikTok, can you break it down for us, Ashley?
Okay, so TikTok, all right, apps taking your personal data, not new. It's not usually indicated as malicious. What app developers are doing, we're like, oh, well, we may want to add a new feature to our app to make it even more amazing. So we want access to your microphone. We want access to this. That in and of itself is not bad, but you don't want to hand a carte blanche to any one of these apps and say, hey, I give you permission to do all these. So if you're downloading an app and it says, hey, this app wants access to your locations. No, unless you're using a GPS, it does. Unless you're trying to get somewhere, an app doesn't need that. It doesn't. And as you said, the TikTok is super, super popular. So it was the fourth most downloaded iPhone app in 2019. 9 out of 10 TikTokers, I guess we would call them, engage with the app more than once per day. And it is rather insidious in what it gathers. So What it gathers is it doesn't just gather your phone hardware, like what OS you're using, what dimensions you're using, your phone number, your hardware ID, the memory uses, disk space. It actually looks at apps you've already installed. It can find apps that you've deleted from a cached value. I know, kind of creepy. It gathers your network info. And the big issue with the fact that it's gathering all this data is that it was storing them in these data silos in Alibaba, which already had a leak. And I believe that leak was July 2019. And it was actually huge. It was 900 gigs of data, which was, all the data it got from you or anybody else that used it. Now, what they have done, what they've tried to do right now is they are sitting there and saying, okay, well, we're being more secure. So it's taking all that US data and it's housing it in storage centers in the United States. Okay, that's making it a little better, but that's still open to hackers. Now with the ban, this is super interesting. The ban itself is not yanking the app off your phone, but it is preventing updates. It's preventing those updates. The problem with preventing updates is that those updates are there to provide security features and are fixes and not just add new features. So TikTok in 2020 has had multiple patches for vulnerabilities, especially when it got out that they were taking all of this data. People were kind of in an uproar going, no, we don't like this. So it's sitting there going and patching and moving that kind of data, and they're trying to protect it. But if with the ban, they can't download those updates to protect them. And these kind of vulnerabilities lead to actors capturing those user data, sending them malicious links because it does have that data. And so you really you have this really bad scale where, okay, you don't really want to use TikTok, but if you're going to use it, you should keep it patched, which the ban prevents.
Well, we've been living with these types of apps and platforms for a long time now. And just to play devil's advocate here, we've got things like Facebook that have been around since the advent of social media, since MySpace opened up this whole piece of the pie for us. We've gotten used to this whole idea of, cool, let me post my photos, my life on these platforms and share it with others. But we don't often think about the fact we're sharing that stuff with the platform itself. And where's the legal, I guess, where's the sense of accountability in terms of the law is kind of my big question. Like, where are the regulations on companies like this, or do we just trust them in blind faith, right?
Unfortunately, that's true. When we download these apps, it sits there and we want to get to our whatever game or whatever app that we're using. So we kind of just hit accept. And since you've accepted it, it says, oh, well, you read the fine print. You let us gather this data. It's hard to regulate that kind of data collection when you've already accepted, and the end user has already accepted it. The onus should be on the app to say, no, we're going to limit this, which is why, and no one really likes doing this, but you need to demand your privacy. You need to click that link on the privacy policy. You need to check it out. You need to say, okay, what permissions does it want? And sometimes, and this is important, you can limit those permissions. You can say, yes, you can access, or only when you're using this app, or you can say, I will say, yes, you can access this part of the data and not to this part of the data. That is a good app developer. Those are the ones that are giving you those granular access. So right now, Android users can actually review permissions for individual apps by going to the settings screens and choosing device and then apps. And then both Android and iPhone lets you kind of turn off those GPS location features within those settings, which is something that you really want to do. You don't want somebody tracking your location. It's just not a good idea. So unfortunately, the onus is on the end user to look at that privacy policy. Yeah,
that's fair. Like we all get hit with those things. Like when we buy a piece of software, we always get hit with that that EULA, all those and nobody reads that, right?
No.
Like nobody reads that. Like we just go click to the bottom and hit yes because we want to use the software and get on with our dang lives. So there's already like a broken process there.
There is.
And where that's its own question, is like, where's the responsibility? Where's the accountability? And in this case, the US federal government is saying that we need to take actions kind of out of distrust. So there's a sense that we no longer trust specifically TikTok and WeChat and the like out of the bunch. Mm-hmm. And the obvious connection there is they're associated with China, right? So TikTok is owned by ByteDance.
Yes.
And that allegedly China, it has influence and is looking over the shoulder of these ByteDance developers. And WeChat, that one's owned by Tencent, and that's China's premier chat program. That's like their Facebook, right? Like, and they use that to make monetary transactions, like PayPal style transactions, is what I've read. And we're making these federal moves against a specific nation, right? Like, this is definitely targeting, because I can't think of a single software app that's like American only made, right? Like what? Like, we don't live in a world that's like exclusively Americans who have lived here X years can touch or develop.
Yeah, even when you see "Made in America," the parts that go into that, which part is
Mm-hmm. Like if I walked over to Microsoft's campus right now, well, I guess right now is a bad example from COVID, right? Nobody would be there, but if I did,
it'd be all sparse.
Yeah, it would be. But if you look at any tech company, right, or any software development company is insanely diverse most of the time, and people, in Seattle, we've had this big influx, of people from all kinds of countries come here to work. What's the deal here? Like, what is this thing actually a threat, or is this kind of
what I said, like in the beginning, they're pushing back against those concerns. They're saying, hey, here's how we're updating and patching this stuff. Again, with the ban, that's a problem, because they basically said, okay, well, you can't patch this. Well, of course, now you're going to be more at risk. You have to kind of go back and forth and say, all right, you are banning this app because you think it's evil. You're just taking your data. Well, a lot of other, Facebook's taking your data too. There's it's a little bit of a balancing act. You don't want to, you're sitting there and saying, hey, China's, looking over the shoulder and providing these censorship, but well, technically we're doing the same thing by banning this app with this executive order. So by blocking these software updates, you're actually harming the privacy more, because people are still using this app.
So say I'm a TikTok user, I'm an addict. I look at this thing every day. It's like, say I go driving, I take videos of myself goofing around. I upload all this data. Say I've got gigs of videos on TikTok, and now I see all this stuff happening. What do I do? Do I just, if I uninstall the app, my data's on their cloud? Yeah. Right. Your data's
gonna remain there. I don't know off the top of my head. That would be a question you'd actually have to email their support. Actually, a lot of app developers do have a privacy policy where you can say, hey, scrub my data. And they are legally required to.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not that happens, they're supposed to send you proof of this as well. It is I believe if the company is over a certain size, they have X amount of weeks to remove your data per a citizen request, or per America, I know, per request. And I think also there's a different set of laws in California where it's even more stringent.
Yeah, CCPA is extremely stringent, and they're on the pioneering edge in the US of creating something that's similar or comparable to the GDPR in the EU, right? So, but that tells me that at the federal level, who's holding these companies accountable for actually doing what they're supposed to do? And I really want to know if that is what you just said. Is that in fact a thing?
What they're doing, yeah.
Well, A, is that a law? B, does anybody enforce that law? And C, when I tell TikTok to get me the heck out of there, peace. Are they actually doing that? Like that? There's three huge questions there.
I don't have the answers for you, but like that's a really good topic to research. I would also say something else that's interesting. It's like when you have these TikTok and WeChat bans, you can see U.S. citizens trying to circumvent those bans by jailbreaking their devices, and jailbreaking your device opens it up to a lot of craziness, and it's easier to kind of get in there and mess stuff up, and you're not getting those kind of updates that can protect your device when you have
Can you define that, Ashley, for listeners who've never heard that?
So it's basically you're removing those software restrictions that are imposed on the device. It allows root access. So if you're taking Apple devices, they have closed software. So Android is open software. You can get in there, you can kind of look at the software, you can see what's going on. With iOS, it's basically privilege escalation. It's saying I can go in there and mess with Apple's proprietary software. I don't know if that was
you're taking
of it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. You're taking down those safeguards that are imposed by the manufacturer and their software of your phone itself, not just the app, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
If it's kind of like prohibition almost, like, we've taken this reactive step of like, okay, get this thing out of here. We're going to pass this law, this executive order. Then, their updates can't come through. So now if I'm tech savvy enough to jailbreak, I don't think that's I don't know how simple of a task that is on a phone.
Well, also, yeah, I'm not sure how easy it is. I actually do have a device that I do need to jailbreak for funsies, for practice. Unless I'm not supposed to do that. Shh, I didn't say that.
I didn't hear anything.
These are not the broken devices you're looking for. But when you have the internet, and the internet is wonderful, but it also can show you how to do things that maybe aren't quite legal or that you're not supposed to.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
It even the least tech savvy person can follow a set of directions.
Well, that's also the fun part of like being in security is you get to learn the dark side. Like we call them the dark arts in my class. It's like funny because it kind of makes you uncomfortable. Like we learn, in order to learn something, sometimes you have to like make it yourself and understand how easy it is to do something. Like we wrote a Python script in my class where like all it takes to hijack the user's webcam is literally like 10 lines of code by pulling from an existing Python library. And it just checks, if your webcam is not taken by another service on your computer, it just takes over. And you can then, you can code a loop in there to make it persistently take over your webcam. You could send the feed to the attacker's computer, and they could look at you through the webcam with not much code. Like obviously, like if you've never coded, that's tough. But
right.
if you've coded before and you've coded not even malware, just Python.
And that's the thing, like all these scripts that are available, almost nobody writes a script from scratch. You find somebody that's already done the template, then you start saying, okay, well, how can I use this to my advantage? Let me take out this part here, add this in here, and now you have that particular script to work for what you need.
It blows my mind. Like I know these things are out there. Like being in this field, I know, but it's so crazy to like see this happen in front of you and see how easily it happens. And that's what blew everybody's mind with TikTok was like that video went out of when what did he do? He copied, it showed how TikTok copies to your clipboard, the temporary clipboard on your phone.
Yes.
And it's every few seconds, it's like reading your clipboard buffer, right?
Yeah, it was an insecure use of WebView, I believe, is the technical term for what it was. It was basically executing those arbitrary commands, and it's a little scary.
Yeah, that's a little sketchy, right? For something that
it's supposed to be a cute. It's supposed to be a Vine. It's supposed to be a Vine kind of sharing or video sharing thing.
Yeah, like an innocent, like for fun app, but then it has these crazy, like, oops, I'm copying everything you do, like operations built in.
Well, now I'm wondering, like, was Vine the same way?
Yeah,
like,
who knows?
Yeah, exactly. We could go back and like look at that code. Was it doing the same thing?
Yeah, like questions like this are why I came to security for answers. And when I came into this field, like I saw all these other passionate individuals who deeply care about this stuff. And it like this doesn't just affect some computer at work like we used to think of it. Like this affects our our system of government, the validity of our elections. Obviously, like that's a top concern these days. This affects our infrastructure, the integrity of our communications. Like this is a big deal that I'm glad that security is in the spotlight these days because it needs to be, right? Like this needs to be a public topic right up there next to, how do we deal with the crises in 2020? This needs to be, it's up there.
Right. We need to have the laws and we need to have some semblance of proof. Like here is how we scrub the data. Here's the proof of the data being scrubbed. There needs to be proof.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can pass laws and you can say you're going to make things better, but laws are kind of like company policies. Like if you implement it wrong, if there's no teeth, like if there's a lack of follow through, you could have unintended consequences. Like what if the unintended consequence of this TikTok quote unquote ban is just to make people inclined to jailbreak more or
find lookalike apps.
Yeah.
Like they were seeing this in I believe in India. Somebody had created a TikTok Lite or a TikTok, basically a clone, but it was created by a bad threat actor that was just like, okay, yeah, you want to download this since it's banned, go ahead and get the new TikTok, and basically infested with a bunch of malware. These are the issues that we run into.
That's insane because clearly, so the idea behind this whole ban is to make the U.S. more sovereign, to make us not leak things to competitive foreign nations, right? Like that's the intent. Like that's a good intent, is putting the U.S. first. But gosh, it's scary to think of the unintended consequences when if you issue this order to ban it, but then it doesn't actually get banned. Instead, it can't update you, and so any vulnerabilities this thing has,
they stay and they grow as more people like sit there and try to like break through the app. It's like, well, they're not gonna patch this because
So if you've ever pen tested against like Windows 7, right, like I have, or any kind of really obsolete system, there's just more ways to get in. Yeah, it's terrifying. Like
so I have one of my favorite things is the Red Queen hypothesis. And I spout this all the time. So if you've ever read Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, the Red Queen takes Alice by the hands and they run like super fast and then they stop and Alice is sitting there catching her breath and she kind of looks up and she goes, we're in the same place. And the Red Queen's like, of course. You have to run as fast as you can to stay in the same place. And if you want to actually get anywhere, you have to run faster than that. And the whole point of that is that these good pen testers versus bad pen testers, bad threat actors, good cybersecurity professionals need to run as fast as they can to just stay even with the amount of penetration and malware and threats that are out there.
Oh,
and
for
if you
sure.
want to get out ahead, you have to go even faster.
For sure, especially if you're in a role where you're looking for those newest things, like the threat hunter type roles out there. Like you've got to like a big percentage of your time has to be like reading new CVEs, reading news constantly, right?
Reading news constantly and constantly like searching. Like this is why these ethical hackers need to be protected. The ones that sit there and like the bug bounty programs need to be celebrated. And like the companies need to not say, oh, well, you went out, you accidentally went a teeny bit outside that scope, so we're going to sue you. Like, and they can do that.
Or toss you in jail.
Or toss you in jail, exactly. And it's like, okay, well, I don't want to like check for these things. Okay, so now you're just sitting there with an open vulnerability.
Well, that's why I'm in this field. It's like insanely interesting. The consequences of our work in this field, what this has on society is I think we're starting to appreciate that as a society, but man, it continues to be really
thrust into the forefront this year because everybody's at home. So it's just like, so what are we going to do at home?
Well, that's a whole nother wrench in the machine, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about your journey here. Like you came in from not from the traditional like IT ladder. Like where did you come into cyber from?
So I grew up, my dad's actually a computer engineer. And so we grew up with computers around the house. So I always knew how to figure out how to do stuff. Things would not work and I'd be like, okay, let me try this. Let me try this. But didn't really like sit there as a career in my head. So I actually worked as an X-ray tech. I always liked technology, and X-ray technology is kind of cool, taking those pictures. And then we got actually some new software in our hospital system. It was called Epic software. And my coworkers were having a little bit of a hard time. So I thought, oh, well, here, I can figure this software out. I can help teach you this. And I kind of realized, I'm like, man, I really like doing this stuff. I really like doing this stuff. How am I going to get into this? So I kept trying to sneak my way into companies and be like, hey, I don't have the formal education. I said, but I'm really good at learning and I'm really good at figuring stuff out. I got a lot of no's, mostly no's, all no's, until Rubka decided to hire me. Jose Miguel actually hired me for what he's like, I didn't hire you for what you had done. I hired you for what you can do. Because I kind of walked in there and I said, you know what? I've never really used Mac OS systems before, but I walked into my interview with 15 pages. I said, this is what I learned in a weekend.
That's insane. Like nobody does that in an interview or after an interview. Like who does that? Like they go home and they like write a report on what on the question
after the
that
first phone
was
interview, I came back to the first in-person interview and said, here is a complete presentation. Is what I know.
Yeah. So all you job hunters out there, take notes. Like this show's dedication. And you also, I understand you cleared your Network Plus. So that's huge because like if you're not coming from IT and like building enough knowledge to get that knocked out, it doesn't just come natural. Like this is something you have to earn.
Well, and one of those things is like, okay, so yes, I landed that job and that's great. And I'm learning on the job. You need to learning from a book and getting certifications is great. You want the practical knowledge, but maybe no job is going to have everything that you need to know. And no cert is going to have everything you need to know. But combining them, you can make a pretty broad picture of stuff that you can present in interviews or help in your job search or help in your job. And one of the other things with that, and something that I really liked, is like, okay, no, none of the questions or what you're learning from these certs are, they're all ideal situations, and you never run into an ideal situation at work. But
Agreed.
You remember it. You're like, hey, I remember something about that. And then you learn it faster. It comes back to you faster, even if that cert was a while ago. And it shows that you're dedicated to your continuing education.
Yeah. When I was in IT, I first started reading up on the ITIL framework, the ITIL library, that started like giving me ideas on how to do my job better, like how to aspire to achieving some kind of standard in my role. And that was really inspiring to see those platonic ideals, but also get like new tools, new things that I can implement in my work that actually help, that actually apply. So like there's something to be said for that. Like as much as we hate on certs in security because there's just too dang many of them, it seems like, and they're expensive too to throw money at. You're spending thousands a year if you're on that treadmill getting them. Mm-hmm. So on one hand, they're despised, but on the other hand, it's nice when you really get something from it, like either employability, which is the general idea, of course, but like maybe you get like a new perspective, like a new framework or a standard that you can apply. That feels the best to me, is like I took this thing, I studied it myself, and I brought it back to my work. Like that's really satisfying for me.
I was having some issues, so I'm on Discord quite a bit, and I was having this issue, and I'm like, wait a minute. I've seen this before in one of my little scenario questions, and I went back and realized that I could uninstall and reinstall some of these drivers. And it wasn't the driver. I'm trying to remember what it was because I was like super excited about it. And all I know is that it hits. There was a little tiny bit that stuck in the back of my brain, and that's That's what happens with all those tickets.
Well, so many things are a variable of like turning it off and back on again, or the fancy word is baseline, but
hello IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Exactly. And so everything starts there.
And I have said that a million times. And guess what I forgot to do when I was having an issue? And I told Mark, I said, this is a really weird issue. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, did you try turning it off and on again? And I was just, I'm so embarrassed.
That feeling, like that instinct that you were supposed to have, it doesn't come naturally. Like you don't just get Security Plus one day and then you go back to work and you have these instincts now. Like now you just know now you just magically have this knowledge of what to do. No, it doesn't work like that. Like they do
cheese.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so you have Swiss cheese, but you're going to have holes in your knowledge. And so you add a cert. It's like, okay, so I've blocked off some of those holes, but that's why you have multiple layers of cheese. Security is the same thing. Cybersecurity, layers.
Yeah, absolutely.
No silver bullet.
Absolutely. Like, I think that's the truth right there, is like, get the experience and pick up those certs on the way. Like, that's the journey, right? So that's awesome that you're really progressing. Like you're working on this, you're getting deeper and deeper into into
the rabbit hole.
Your rabbit
I keep falling
hole,
down, and I'm like, oh, I keep learning stuff, and why is there so much more? It's like, okay, yay, I learned this, and it's like opens it up, and it's like even more. It's like, okay, I keep chopping the heads off the Hydra, and they keep growing back.
Yeah. Well, that's about time, Ashley. But like if somebody wants to follow you or reach out to you online, where can they find you?
So my LinkedIn, it's just Ash Pedicini, Pedicini. So I try to keep up my little TikTok video is on there. Some of my cat cybersecurity myth videos are on there. Was rather thinking about doing some more tech tip videos with cats, just because I really like doing them. And sometimes they're just more fun to watch than, reading. This is how you do this. Gotta add cats. Cats are just fun.
Yeah, Ash has an insanely entertaining video on this topic today of Tick Tock, where she breaks down the vulnerabilities, the problems with it, the security issues with it. Really interesting stuff. Thank you so much, Ash, for popping onto the show, and keep in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, David.
Cool.